Welcome to Pinnacle's NHL Best Bets. I'm Anthony Bruno, joined by Scott Cullen on behalf of Pinnacle. We are down to the final two. The Stanley Cup Final has arrived. The Edmonton Oilers taking on the Florida Panthers. We're going to dive into series prices. We're going to look at Conn Smythe Futures. This is going to be a great episode as we close out the NHL season. So let's not waste any time, Scott. Oilers versus Panthers. As of recording, the Oilers right now, plus 124, Panthers minus 143 to win the series. McDavid making his first Stanley Cup Final appearance, going up against the Florida Panthers, who were just here last year. So who are you looking at in this series, man? Who's winning the Stanley Cup?
Well, I'll be honest. Coming into the Game 6 against Dallas, I still thought the Stars had a chance against the Oilers, and then they outplayed them so badly, but they ran into Connor McDavid. And I think that's sort of the path here that the Oilers are looking to tread, is that I think the Panthers are going to be able to control play 5-on-5. And while the Oilers have an awesome power play, we've seen that they have had trouble just generating power plays. I think they've had 4 minutes of power play time basically per game, while the Panthers are up near the top of the league in the playoffs, getting like 6 minutes of power play time per game. So, while the Oilers, they score on the power play, like no one else, they're not generating as many power plays, and that kind of negates the advantage. And so, if I'm picking a team here to win the series, I'm taking the Florida Panthers, because I think they're going to win the 5-on-5 battle, because they draw more penalties. And so they make up for not being as efficient as the Oilers on the power play by just getting more power plays. And so that is, if I'm making the pick, that's the pick. I can look at the other side and say, look at the Oilers, as long as they can hang close, they have a magician there who might be able to pull out a game or two for them, and that gives them a fighting chance. But if I have to decide, I can't base it on, well, Connor McDavid is going to pull a rabbit out of his hat 4 times to make this happen.
Yeah, it's a really interesting series. That I've been on the Florida Panthers basically from day one. And spoiler alert, I'm sticking with the Florida Panthers to win the Stanley Cup. I completely agree with you. I think they're going to win the 5-on-5 battle. Obviously, the Oilers' special teams throughout the entire playoffs has been incredible. They have the number 1 power play in the playoffs, the number 1 penalty kill in the playoffs. They obviously have the best player in the world. They basically have the 2 best players in the series. You can make an argument that it's McDavid and Barkov, McDavid and Draisaitl, but I mean, those guys are the great equalizers, right? Because they could lose the 5-on-5 battle, but if McDavid and Draisaitl just decide to go crazy, I mean, they can win games by themselves, as we've seen several times, not only in this playoffs, but in previous playoffs. So, I don't love the number right now on the Florida Panthers at minus 143. It opened around like minus 127 on the Panthers, which I thought was obviously a way better price. And if you're on the Panthers, I hope that you took some of those earlier prices. But it still hasn't gotten completely away from me where I don't want to bet this. Now, the Oilers at plus 124, that is a pretty intriguing number. But as I said, I've been on this Panthers team basically from day one. I'll be sticking with them here. They have closed out every series so far in 6 games or less. So if you think they're going to do it again, which I think actually they have a decent chance to do, you can also get the Panthers minus 1.5 games at plus 153. I just think that they're the better team. Even the goaltending matchup, I know Stuart Skinner closed out that series against Dallas looking pretty incredible, but Bobrovsky's the better goaltender. He's had the better playoffs overall, even though he hasn't been great. But at the end of the day, I think it's Florida's time. I think they're winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and your point on the price is a valid one. At the opening price when it was, I believe, minus 127 for the Panthers, I love them a lot at that price. And now as it kind of keeps creeping higher, as more people seem to agree with us that the Panthers are the side to be on, I start to look at the Oilers and think, well, if it keeps climbing, maybe there's some value to be had there, because I do think this is a close series. I don't want to be guilty of looking at the Oilers in Game 6 against Dallas and assigning too much value to that one single game, because I mean, they looked terrible and somehow managed to win. But for the most part in the playoffs, they've also managed to control play during 5-on-5, not to the degree the Panthers have, but close. And so if they can continue doing that, and not deliver another clunker like they did in Game 6 against Dallas, then yeah, we could have a very close series. And so, if the price kind of keeps climbing there on the Oilers, there might be value by the time we drop the puck.
Yeah, we'll see where the line goes, because obviously Game 1 of the Cup Final goes Saturday night, so we still have a little bit of time here, and we'll see what happens with these series prices. But yeah, as of now, I'm going to be riding with the Florida Panthers. But I think it's going to be a hell of a series. I think it's, and I know I said like you can take the Panthers in 6 games or less. I'd be shocked, honestly, Scott, if this goes less than 6 games. So
yeah, I think that's fair. And so some of it, I think, is that it's tough to trust either goaltender in a huge way. Like, I know Bobrovsky, took the Panthers to the final last year. He had a strong regular season this year. We've seen enough inconsistency from him over his career that, you can't just bank on, Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be awesome for this series. And certainly with Stuart Skinner, he doesn't have near the track record. And to his credit, I will say that I thought that Skinner had to play better if the Oilers were going to get through Dallas, and he did. His first couple rounds of the playoffs were pretty shaky. And so if Skinner, can give the Oilers a solid performance in net, maybe that'll be enough. But I think some of the uncertainty on the series ties to goaltenders that you might have reason not to trust.
Yeah, we'll see who shows up in this series. Is Skinner going to continue how he's been playing, or how he played at the end of that Dallas series? Is Bobrovsky going to show up? Because he didn't play well against Vegas in last year's Cup Final after he was a beast basically the entire playoffs. So we know how goaltending is. It's really hard to predict. It's so volatile. But I think no matter what, this is probably going 6 or 7 games. Even if you want to do an exact series bet here of Panthers in 6, I also really like that as well. But there's so many ways that you can attack this. It's going to be a hell of a series. But another thing we have to discuss here, Scott, is the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP. So right now, really interesting, Connor McDavid is the overwhelming favorite to win the Conn Smythe, even though the Florida Panthers are obviously the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. So a player on the losing team hasn't won the Conn Smythe since J.S. Jaguar in 2003 with the Ducks when they took on the Devils in the Cup Final. So where are you looking at here? Like, are you putting money on McDavid, or is there somebody else on the other side that you're taking a look at?
Well, not only has it been a long time since a player on the losing team, there's only been one skater on the losing team, Reggie Leach with the Philadelphia Flyers back in the mid-1970s. Wow. Like we're going way back to find a skater who won the Conn Smythe on a losing team. But at the same time, like, Leach scored 19 goals in that playoff, and so it was kind of easy to say, well, he was so far ahead. Well, McDavid is very likely to win the scoring race in the playoffs. Florida is not going to have somebody who catches him. I believe Matthew Tkachuk's the top scorer for Florida right now. He's about 12 points behind McDavid. Like, he's not going to make that up in this series. Now, maybe Leon Draisaitl catches McDavid to overtake him for that for the scoring race. But that's the argument that's going to be there, is that if McDavid wins the playoff scoring race by 10, 12 points, there will be enough voters who decide that yes, it's going to deserve, especially if the series goes long. Like, if the Panthers kind of take care of business quickly, that might make it more difficult for someone to say yes, we should still give it to somebody on the losing side. But that's why McDavid is somehow favored here, even though the Oilers are underdogs in the series. So I don't think there's a ton of value in McDavid. I think if I'm looking for value, I'm probably going to someone like Matthew Tkachuk at, I think he's plus 600 right now. Because McDavid is obviously, if the Oilers win, I think he's a slam dunk to win it. But if the Panthers win and they manage to neutralize McDavid, and he doesn't expand on his scoring lead by that much, well, then the argument starts to look towards, okay, well, who's been the best player for the Panthers? And it could be Barkov, and it could be Tkachuk, and it could be Bobrovsky. But to me, I look at Tkachuk, and honestly, this season has just been a good season for Tkachuk. You know, I think his past 2 seasons have probably been even a little bit better. But he's also a guy who really shows up for big games. And I think he's done enough in this year's playoffs that if he shows up for the final in a big way, that voters will start gravitating towards Tkachuk for the Conn Smythe.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with you with Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, he's sitting right around plus 600 right now. I think that's a pretty good price. But the guy that I'm eyeing down is Alexander Barkov, who's a shade over 4-1. You know, I think this award is also narrative driven as well. I mean, we see this with so many awards, right? I think there's been a lot of steam that's been picked up on, you know, just Barkov and his two-way play and how he has shut down the other team's best players throughout the playoffs. You know, even his offensive production has been really good as well, you know, sitting around a point per game in this year's playoffs. And I think that if he's able to, and listen, I don't think anyone's going to shut down McDavid completely. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe McDavid has a really rough series going up against Barkov, but I think if Barkov is able to neutralize him, score a couple goals, you know, rack up, let's say 5 to 7 points, I think he's probably going to win the Conn Smythe if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup. Like, it would take just an incredible effort for Bobrovsky, just because I don't think his numbers are quite good enough as it stands right now to win the Conn Smythe. You said it. Right now, I'm looking at either Barkov or Tkachuk for the Conn Smythe. I think McDavid would just have to go nuclear, and in order to win. Listen, as you said, if the Oilers win the Cup, he's going to win the Conn Smythe. But if the Oilers lose, but he racks up, I don't know, 13 points in 7 games or something like that, then maybe there's a chance that he wins it. But I'm going to stick with I'm on Alexander Barkov right now. I think the Panthers captain is going to win this thing. All right.
Well, I'll be honest. That I like your argument there, Anthony. I think that Barkov's two-way play does give him a real opportunity here. That if he not only scores in the final, but manages to neutralize McDavid, that can make for an easy way for the voters to go. And that's one thing to consider with the Conn Smythe, is that it's a small group of voters, right? This isn't the entire pro hockey writers doing this voting. It's just this small group who are covering the final, and so you can kind of, like you say, the narrative can kind of drive the story pretty quickly. And so if the story early on is that Alexander Barkov is getting his way against Connor McDavid, then you can very easily see the Conn Smythe moving in that direction too.
Yeah, that's the thing. We could look at all the numbers we want, but a lot of the times this is narrative driven, and we'll see how the series plays out. But I think it's going to be one hell of a series. I'm so excited to see McDavid in his first Stanley Cup final. Like, I think it would have been a colossal failure if this Oilers team wasn't able to get to a Cup final with McDavid and Draisaitl both in their prime. So I'm glad that they were able to get here, and now we'll see what they got against who I think is the most well-rounded team in the NHL, in the Florida Panthers. All right. Well, that is going to do it for our Stanley Cup Final preview. Listen, if you're betting on the Stanley Cup Final, go check out the Game 1 lines on Pinnacle. If you're looking at series prices, Conn Smythe Trophy Futures, you are going to get the best odds and best payouts at Pinnacle. So listen, you're making a big mistake if you do not have Pinnacle Sportsbook, because you're getting a ton of value for your money at Pinnacle. So listen, for Anthony Bruno and Scott Cullen, enjoy the Stanley Cup Final. It's going to be one hell of a series. Hopefully you can win your bets. And remember that Pinnacle is the home of smart betting. So bet smart and bet Pinnacle.